There are 1,000 stories in the Envisioners' future. This is just one of them.
Do you know what? This feels massively trivial. Here's some guy who not only fought in the Second World War, had the idea and just passion to go and do something about what's going on in the world in the NHS. Started out to look for £1,000 and ended up with 33 million or thereabouts. And here I am just sitting playing an audio file of people clapping and clapping while I'm sat on my fat backside having done nothing. So I feel slightly disingenuous in that, but what an amazing character, Captain Tom, Sir Captain Tom, in fact. And just an inspiration, isn't it wonderful? I think, well, have you seen how people play out in the news and the media, and how the legacy of that will be far more than the money that went to the NHS, but it will be, hopefully, the inspiration of what people can do in that. So always difficult to go from those kinds of things into a segue about, the live stream and what we're talking about. Although in our own way, I guess we're trying to help. So we're back again. Thank you again for joining us. I hope you'll continue to clap, or if not, keep going. That's fine. And we're back. We're talking about digital poverty. Before we do that, I want to talk to you again about what we're doing with the guys at Parent Zone. Another live stream, the same time, same bat channel, but different day, Thursday evenings. We're back with episode 3 of Remote Schooling SOS. Here's this week's trailer. Hi. Dave Coplin here, bringing you news of this week's Remote Schooling SOS live stream, coming to you live on YouTube Thursday evening at 6 o'clock. This week, as part of Children's Mental Health Week, we're looking at the power of creativity and play and what we can all do as parents to work with our children to encourage and enhance creativity and play, especially in relation to technology. So we've got some fabulous guests on the show. We'll be looking at the power and potential of gaming, amongst many, many other things. We will also be, as always, answering any question you may have about the challenge of remote schooling. We'd love to see you there. We're here to help. We'll be live on Thursday evening at 6 o'clock. It'd be great if you could join us. So I'm actually quietly thrilled about that, because whilst we're talking about children's mental health, we are talking about the power of gaming, and we've got 2 wonderful guests on that show. In particular, a guy called Andy Robertson, who goes by the name of Geek Dad Gamer, who is just, and has been for years, brilliant about engaging families with the potential of gaming. So if you're out there and you're thinking about gaming as a problem, tomorrow night's show is going to be about showing you how gaming actually could be part of the solution. Anyway, enough about that. The thing that we have to do when we think about remote schooling is we always come up against this issue of digital poverty. And tonight's guest is absolutely wonderful. He's a social entrepreneur who has been looking at ways that we can actually head off digital poverty, not just from a devices perspective, but looking at the spectrum of challenge of digital poverty and what we can do. And so with no further ado, let me bring in David Barker. David, how are you doing?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, thanks for joining us. And look, David, one of the things I'd really love to do, you and I engaged through LinkedIn and talked about the things that you've been up to, and I guess where you're coming from in terms of trying to address the problem. Could you talk to us a bit? Just tell us a bit about your journey. How did you end up really sort of wanting to focus on digital poverty, and talk us through what you're doing with the Digital Divide Fund?
Yeah, sure. So I was actually one of the UK's first internet entrepreneurs in the early 90s, set up one of the first digital marketing agencies, and spent the next 10 years working with clients like Intel, Microsoft, Cisco, driving global campaigns, traveling the world. But by 2004, I just felt actually there's too much poverty in the world. So I actually left the business and became a social entrepreneur. So I've been innovating new solutions, primarily initially focused on skills, because when I studied why there's so many unemployed, low-income families, actually a lot of it's about skills. So my first part of my journey was about innovating new programs. I came up with an innovation to train people in new ways with digital skills and interpersonal skills, to help them get better jobs and higher income jobs as well. So I was doing that for a few years. So very much in the poverty space, unemployment space. But then a few years ago, really just understanding this digital poverty, digital divide. And this is a few years ago, this is before COVID. It's always been there it's been talked about for too long. COVID's really shone a light on the problem and shown how magnified it truly is. And so now we have to really deal with it. The good news is the focus is there. This is our chance to deal with it. And yeah, I think now this is our time to really all pull together to end digital poverty, because it is possible.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? And you will have been to the same conferences that I used to go to, where we all used to sit and talk about the digital divide, and you would have your ISPs and broadband providers. Sorry, they're the same thing. I meant cell phone providers like Vodafone and EE, tech companies like Microsoft and Google, and we would all sit there and stroke our respective beards and think, "Well, isn't it a problem?" And then we'd all bugger off, and then we'd see each other again the next year. And that's not to belittle, there's been great progress, but we still live in a world where digital poverty is a thing, and what. For me, the reason why I was really keen to get you on the show and to talk to you about you doing is, there's no easy solution. I get that. And that's why, we had those conferences, and that's why, it doesn't look like there was progress. But I just don't think we can afford to let it exist anymore. And it just, and I know we have enough challenges in this country, never mind around the world with poverty. I mean, a world where we're still sending out food parcels, it just seems to be insane to me. This is just one area where I just think if we think about the future success, and when I say success, I'm not talking about success in that sort of financial sense, but the ability to have a good life and to be healthy and to be able to be well educated, all those things. They just rely on, digital being at the heart of who we are as a society. So we just can't afford to let it continue. And that's why I was really keen, and maybe just to unpack what you're doing with the fund a bit about, is this as simple as just, getting broadband for people who don't have it, or is there just much more to it?
Yeah, I mean, I was at the same conference as you. So over a few years, like you say, we're all stroking our beards saying what we're going to do about it. And then it came to the summer last year, and it was just time to act. And it's too easy to say, government, you need to do more, government this. I think actually there's a role for civil society, there's a role for business, and there's a role for government, and we have to work together. So the first thing to do, I think, is what can we do ourselves? So we spun up the idea of a digital divide fund. I'm a trustee of a charity called Livery Schools Link. So the good news is the charity, we agreed, we launched the fund, and we raised about £50,000 in the first couple of months. That enabled us to get devices to about 300 disadvantaged students as a start of the fund. And as we got to December, the BBC started to drive a lot of awareness about the issue. We're now on the website of the BBC as well. So we started to get citizens donating money as well. So in 4 weeks, we've had another £70,000, which has been phenomenal. So it now helps over 500 students. So I think that's the message. The message is, what can we do ourselves? Let's do it. And then with that credibility we're all building and passion, then get into more conversations, conversation with local councils. We're now speaking to Tower Hamlets and Hackney. What can we do together? And then we can start to link other councils. And so I think really the answer is connecting the networks of people, councils, government together to understand the role we can all play. So we're aligned and we can maximise that effort as well. There's too much. You probably say yourself, there'll be another person tomorrow somewhere saying we've got to do something about this and creating their own new thing. And actually, no, why don't we just all get behind certain projects and really give it the resources to scale? Hence the Digital Divide Fund. Can we just be the go-to? If you want to donate £1, £100 or £1,000, put it in and we'll make sure that that's going to fund devices for kids and scale out from there. So
I'm intrigued by that. And we'll come back to the sort of the different ways that the people are using the money. But what's happening? People are using the money. Are we just looking for sort of temporary solutions? Are we, is the boat sinking and we're just looking to plug the leaks, or are we building a more sustainable approach to sort of a long-term solution to eradicate digital poverty? What's the sort of perspective on how it's being used, David?
Well, I think it comes down to we're always going to have the problem while we have low-income families and we have people without jobs and unemployment. So we can't end the digital poverty without ending normal poverty and low-income families. So we have to deal with the economic side of increasing prosperity for all to have more money then to actually invest in equipment that your children need. Because all of us as parents will want to fund our children to be prosperous and play our part. But then we should have bursary systems and sponsorship where, unfortunately, we can't do that. And so that perfect model of being able to invest or actually having support from government or councils or charities is the model. But no, we have to increase financial prosperity for all. Look at that as part of the solution, as well as then temporary funding to fill the gap while we solve that. And actually, can we do more to reduce the cost of equipment and the cost of data? And I think that we've got enough of a network now that price reductions could become the norm, and zero rate a lot more access to web to actually get access as well. So, like you say, Dave, there's lots of different things we'll need, but if we work out a master plan, there's no reason we can't get there.
Yeah, and what I like about the approach of the fund is that it's not just sort of a one-size-fits-all solution. It's you're trying to help people address what may be their particular challenge. Because I mean, I think about this a lot, and I wonder maybe you can give me some better insight there. But I sort of think about the three legs of the stool of poverty, and I'm sure that there's more. But for me, it's there's the device, there's the connectivity, but there's also the skills. Because I think that's as much of a barrier for some families as actually the technical device or the physical device themselves. Are they the sort of the typical domains that you're seeing, or are there other things that need to come under that umbrella when it comes to how we solve digital poverty?
Well, I mean, 'cause I came personally from a poor background in North Manchester. My parents struggled. At 12 years old, I didn't know what I wanted to be, but then my dad managed to save a bit of money and bought me a small computer, and that inspired me to want that. That's my career, and that inspired me to teach myself to code, to really be interested. And then at 16, internet entrepreneurs. So actually, the key is that we know tech is part of every job now. Tech is the future. No matter what sector you're in, you're going to have to use technology and have the skills. I think they're saying 17 million people currently in jobs don't have the digital skills they'll need 5 years from now. Does that mean they'll become redundant if they're resistant to learning those skills? Because then we've got the mindset of lifelong learning. There's so many things we need to tackle here that's just going to slow people down, or they'll lose jobs because they won't embrace lifelong learning, which is as important as helping the younger people coming through education as well.
Yeah, it's funny you should bring those stats up, because one of the things that I keep meaning to do, and I will try and get some time towards the spring, is there's so many, and they're government white papers, they're NGO white papers, there's stuff done by the Office of National Statistic, and they all share this theme. And you talked about 17 million people who don't have digital skills. There's other stats like, if you think about today's workforce, 80% of today's workforce will still be in the workplace in 2030. And the conclusion is always the same. And it's like digital skills are key, right? To being able to be successful, to be able to thrive in a modern digital society, it's digital skills. And then you look around and say, well, so what are we doing about helping people acquire those digital skills? And again, maybe this is a bit unfair because this is pre-pandemic as well. Well, we're doing nothing is what we're doing about that. And yeah, there are initiatives that some, great local authorities are doing. There's initiatives that great brands are doing. So the Barclays thing was fantastic. Google has a fantastic, digital program, as do Microsoft and others. But you just think, well, actually, we're not putting enough behind this. If we all collectively agree that this is a core part of our ability to be successful, when are we going to embrace that? When are we going to actually do something with that and make that happen? That's the bit that I think we've really got to address. And hopefully, through things like what you're doing with the fund, we start to build that at the bottom. And I think we've also got to take this top-down approach. And this is why the conversation about education has been so crucial for me, because, again, I talk about this a lot on the show. Pre-pandemic, 95% of the schools in England actively banned devices in classroom. Where would we be if that hadn't been the case? If we'd had a different philosophy about the role of technology in education before the pandemic, we wouldn't be talking about the lost year of education or the lost year of school. We wouldn't be talking about whether we should be asking our kids to repeat the year. We'd be in a different place. And I just think, now's the time. The evidence is unequivocally there. what does it take to just push people across the line and say, okay, this is what we're going to do? That felt like a really great monologue. And then I think I've lost David. He's just like, you're just talking rubbish, mate. He's bailed. Actually, I can hear him. David, are you still there? I've lost video signal, but I think we've got you back, David.
Sorry, David. I don't know what's happened to the connection there. You
How
get me
bizarre.
okay?
Yeah, no, all good, all good. I just finished a very long rant about, look, the evidence is out there. What's it going to take for us to actually do something about all of this?
Yeah, I mean, going back to that point about education, because it's what's the right curriculum. We're still talking about what's the right curriculum for at school. I think that's what wait for new government curriculum per se. There is extracurricular activities now for teaching these skills and learning these skills. I'm a governor of a school, Ada Lovelace School, and we've partnered with IBM, and we're going to be delivering digital skills and skills training to our students on top of the normal curriculum. So that I think that's what we need to be thinking about, is what's the extracurricular ways of ensuring our students are ready whilst we're trying to get the curriculum to catch up and the normal curriculum.
I think that's great. We had a comment from one of the audience, a regular audience, so from Tony, talking about, we've got to stop thinking about we're in the 20th century, because I have this so often in conversations, is we're still stuck in the same mindset we had in the 20th century, and the opportunity in the 21st century is fundamentally different. And it's a bit like, for me, and I wonder, David, if this resonates with you as well, but do you remember the focus we had probably over the last decade about coding for kids? And I'm not saying that that's not a great thing to do, but actually we don't want a world of computer scientists, and coding doesn't turn everybody on. It doesn't, light everybody's sort of interest. But actually, what we really should be doing is helping kids to be confident with technology, regardless of what they choose to do. And if they're artistic, we should be showing them how technology can facilitate that. If they're scientific, we should be engaging with how technology. Do you know what I mean? So it fundamentally shifts, and it becomes much more about digital literacy. And Ian Phillips, who's another regular contributor, always talks about this thing about curiosity and creativity, and using technology to facilitate those, because those two are at the heart of learning. And I think when you start to have that mindset, that's the point at which we can make change happen. The challenge, and again, Ian and his colleague Ty will tell us, part of the challenge with education is we're still measuring the wrong bloody thing. When an Ofsted comes to your school, they're not even interested in what your technical provision is, how the technology provision is. Be interesting to see how that changes actually as we come out of this, as the Ofsted will change and do things. But it has to, right? And so maybe we can catch up with the extracurricular. We can give the teachers the support and confidence they need. But it does come back to this sort of baseline of digital confidence that I think becomes a really interesting part of this. Is there anything going on in what you're doing in the fund that is about building confidence, not so much with kids, but with the families, with the parents, to help them, build that confidence to take to the kids, or to open up the door to the kids? Is there anything going on like that?
Yeah, I mean, our model was we reach out to schools. We actually partner with the teachers that are supporting the families and the students. They can actually ask us for connections as well. So we are getting devices, we're getting connections. But now we're in discussions about, well, what about learning materials? So we're starting to really think about, do we need to scale a fund that's more about like a hardship fund? And what is it kids actually need that's stopping them? Let's get them something. Could be a device, but actually it might not. So I think we need to be thinking more about going back to we're driving a poverty fund, of which digital poverty is part of it. And we've got to think the whole, and because there'll be different barriers to what's holding students back and holding families back, and having that more holistic approach, I think, is going to be important. Joined up thinking across government, and society as well.
And from a government perspective, and I know it's difficult, I'm sure, for you to answer, but do you see government engaging differently now in the third lockdown about this topic, or do you think we're in the same place that we were before?
It was encouraging actually. So in the early months of the lockdown, as we were spinning up the Digital Divide Fund, we were on tables with the DFE and the BB, different organisations. We were engaged with the Department for Education. Everyone was talking to each other. It's great, the announcements like we're getting 800,000 devices to the students. So government is playing a part, but the hole's too big and it's too vast. And unfortunately, one impact of a message like we're getting 800,000 devices to kids, because we were trying to fundraise at the same time, is people start to say, oh, we don't need that fund anymore. Government's dealing with it. And that's
Right.
the problem. That the government needs to say, we're getting 800,000 to the kids, but don't stop doing what you're doing because we can't fill the gap. We need your help as well. And I think that's important that gets across as well.
Do you see anybody in government sort of taking ownership? And it doesn't necessarily need to be a politician, but is there, a particular department that's really starting to own it? Because for me, the difficulty is always that it transcends so many areas. It's as much about health and well-being as it is about education, as it is about employability. And so kind of nobody really owns the overall issue. Do you see that? Does that resonate with you? Do you see that changing at all?
Yeah, I think, again, I'm not sat on those tables just yet, but, if you think about BEIS, you think about DFE, you think about DDC, all these departments, they should all now be thinking we've got to get joined up. And the future prosperity of the UK PLC is about, can our citizens mobilise to actually generate the businesses and the jobs in the digital economy? Because if we don't, other countries will. So digital's at the heart of this, and that's a great reason now to actually pull all these departments and government funding together. It's actually about the success of our nation, not just about can we fill the digital divide. It's all connected. No pun intended.
No, yeah, absolutely, and it's a bit like, I like your story, your own story, and when we had a lady on a few weeks ago about Tony Kent, who was talking a lot about social mobility, and I guess for me, one of the reasons why I'm so intoxicated with technology is because in its sort of purest form, it is the great leveler. It's the thing that democratizes, our society, or helps us democratize. And I get there's an irony there, given what it's done in terms of the polarization of society as well. But it means that no matter what your background, no matter, your sort of kind of education, technology gives you access to all of the world's knowledge. And it gives you the opportunity to build something great with that. And that for me is the thing that why I think technology is so powerful for us. But it's also why it's so frustrating when we get these blockages or these inabilities for us to make sure that it gets into the hands of everybody. And I think that's what's so core for this. And I'm intrigued by your sort of perspective about the success of the nation. And again, I think the whole social mobility piece really plays into this, is helping people understand that technology is at the heart of this. It's, I've been wishing and trying to find a way of getting to, whichever government and talking to them about, really this is a left to right thing. But I've talked a number of times about, we often would get asked, how much broadband does the UK need? And it's like, well, I can't answer that question. You tell me what kind of society you want the UK to be, and then I'll tell you how much broadband we need. Someone needs to have that conversation somewhere, I think, that really starts to bring that to light.
Yeah, and definitely. I think it goes back to, just the idea of, I think what the good news about what's happened in the world is, in the old way of working where you have to do 5 day a week in the office, that stops so many people getting work. Why are you unemployed? Unfortunately, you're living in the wrong place.
Yeah.
So actually, this massive change that's happened now, you can actually work from Skelmersdale and serve a company in London. You no longer have it does the physical location. Suddenly, this new world, actually, if we configure it correctly, will be a game changer. We can really make it, proper equality of opportunity for all that we talk about, scratching our beards again. But actually, I think it's possible now. Technically, it's possible.
Yeah. You've just given me a thought, actually. And I wonder, so a lot of the conversation I've been having about education, and we've looked at all levels, right? So we've looked at primary, secondary, we've looked at further and higher, and about the pivot to embracing the opportunity that blended learning and digital learning gives us. The bit that you've just talked about that actually we've not talked about is the potential, particularly in FE, in further education, to really take those skills. We had another lady actually who's doing some amazing work Louise Compton in Coventry around apprenticeships. So taking sort of young people, skilling them up in terms of IT, and then assigning them into schools so they become a sort of, if you like, an IT liaison for school, which is a great way of extending. But I wonder, there's a huge opportunity now in FE in developing those digital skills that will enable people to be practically successful, or successful in a practical way, if you know what I mean. Give them practical skills that will help them, get a job when they live in Skelmersdale, and the job is 100 miles away, or whatever. So there must be, I think there's an opportunity there about building those skills for not just for young people, but for all of us to start to transition. And again, speaks back to that sort of statistic of 80% of the workforce will still be in the workforce in 2030. So helping them make that transition. That's really good. I've not really thought of that. It's something that probably we'll have to give some thought to, and maybe get some more people on to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, actually, because the first business I created when I became a social entrepreneur was, I call it pop-up academies. We basically popped up in Glasgow, Newcastle, Skelmersdale, different cities, opening spaces, bringing in people, but we didn't have people teaching them in a class environment. They were learning through e-learning, and the people in the room were qualified so that if they had challenges, they coached them. That blended model of learn technically, because you can go home and keep learning, you have to wait for the next class. And the professionals in the room are coaching you to get qualified. And then we can focus on work experience, we can focus on soft skills, interpersonal skills, team working. Why are we still packing unemployed people who've not worked for 6 months into a classroom? Well, there's no way they can learn at the same pace. We need to rethink how people learn. And it's possible now with great video-based interactive learning content with people on demand to coach and support. That's how we were doing it. And we had people going, 54% of people left those programs into full-time jobs, when statistically it was about 7%.
That's incredible. I think we need so much more of that. I know Google had a fantastic initiative called the Digital Garage, or Garage, if you're that way inclined, that also was seeking to do that. And I think this is the opportunity for me, and I think of all of the colleges that I've been to see as part of my day job and talking to people about the future. That's the pivot that I think becomes really important, and it's that connection to employment. But again, makes me think. We've talked about this so many times on the show about this sort of, what's your philosophy for education? And for me, it's about the pathway to employability, and not all about the job, but just that you can afford to be both offer value and be valued by a modern society. And that seems to me to be the point of education, and we've just got to pivot and make into that. Now, look, David, I'm just a little bit conscious of time. We're coming close to time. Where can I go and find out about the Digital Divide Fund and the stuff that you're doing, and how I can contribute, and where it's getting spent, and all that sort of stuff? And again, brilliantly, the connection has dropped. So I was offering you this plum opportunity, right? So let's run that again, and then we'll see if we can get that. So David, where can I go and find out about what you're doing with the Digital Divide Fund, how I can contribute, and where it's being spent?
Yeah, so we're on Virgin Money Giving. So if you search for the Digital Divide Fund on Virgin Money Giving, you can donate. No amount too small. Literally, as money's raised, we're reaching out to schools and providing grants to then get devices to students. So Digital Divide Fund on Virgin Money Giving, very simple way to donate to the campaign.
And is there sort of information there that I can find out about what the fund's set up to do, or is there another website to look at? That's one of those evenings, isn't it? I should know better. I'll give David just a second. No, okay, I think we may have lost him. Oh, he's back now. Is there another website that talks more broadly about the fund, or is it all on the Virgin Giving page, David? Okay. I'm just in the interest of time and crappy internet. I am going to move on. So, ladies and gentlemen, please thank David Barker for giving his time and insight. And what a great initiative. And what I love about it is it's seeking to conquer not just the depth of digital poverty, but also the breadth of it too. And I think that's what makes it special. That's what makes it so important. So go and check that out if you can. Thanks again, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Crappy internet for the last 2 weeks, which is a little bit sucky, but kind of comes with the territory, I guess. So sorry about that. Hope it didn't spoil your viewing pleasure too much. We'll be back again next week with another look into the future of work and beyond. Thanks so much for joining us. You know the drill. If you've enjoyed us, give us a like, give us a subscribe. If you haven't enjoyed it, let us know and we'll try and fix it for you and see what we can do. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you all again next week. Stay safe and we'll see you then. Thank you.
There are 1,000 stories in the Envisioners' future. This is just one of them.